dogs today. The reality is they're looking at it saying, look, that's evidence of evolution. Now, I failed to mention this earlier, my apologies. The only evidence we ever see for evolution is of microevolution. You remember the 6 types? The only one they ever give us evidence of is the last one, which I agree with. If you want to say that evolution, which by the way, I don't think we've really gotten a solid definition. We've heard some ideas about evolution. Well, it's tracing and it's just change. And okay, what is evolution? I mean, is evolution life from non-life? What is it? I don't think we've gotten a good definition of that. But we got these varieties today. There's no doubt they came from the same kind of animal. That's not evolution. That's variation. I guarantee you will never get that dog to learn how to fly, and you will never turn him pink. That ain't going to happen, okay? He doesn't have the genetic information to do that. You can't do that. So, yeah, dog, wolf, coyote, common ancestor, that goes right along with the creationist worldview.
Next question.
It was to Charlie, but now it is to Frank. Have you seen your own brain? If not, then it probably doesn't exist, right? Why should we listen to you?
This is one of the great interesting facts that we as human beings cannot perceive ourselves as our brain. What do you look at in the mirror? Well, basically what you look at in the mirror is a face. A face that consists of eyes, nose, mouth, and all of that. Is that you? Is what you are your body? Or is it the whole thing? The brain is not capable of perceiving itself. Yeah, okay. Does that mean the brain doesn't exist? Well, let me tell you something. I've blown a man's brains out. I know what they look like.
Eric, neither you or your father introduces scientific evidence against evolution. A lack of proof does not constitute falsehood. Why do you use this logical fallacy?
Is there evidence against evolution? Here's the way I kind of want to respond to that. I'm not asking for creation to be taught in the schools. Evolution is taught in the schools. I want empirical evidence that evolution did happen. You say, well, prove it didn't. No, you prove it did. Hey, I want you to prove to me that watermelons aren't blue on the inside till you cut the skin. Prove it. Come on, you're going about it the wrong way. You guys are making the claim evolution happened. Okay, so far we have seen 0 evidence of evolution actually happening. You say, well, we want to keep this with science. Well, when you talk about evolution, you can't keep it in the bounds of science. You're automatically going to go into theology because that's what evolution is. In its ultimate, biggest, broadest term, evolution is trying to discuss the origins of mankind. You cannot discuss the origins of mankind without getting into a theological argument. That is impossible. So, Eric, prove evolution didn't happen. Now I can prove to you that creation did happen. I mean, I believe there's lots and lots of evidence that shows creation happened and that evolution did not happen. I predict that if the creation worldview is true and God made everything in 6 literal days, then I bet there would be thousands of symbiotic relationships where one animal or one plant can't survive without another. And we see those all over the world. That's a huge problem for the evolution worldview. Which one evolved first when they needed each other? The termite has a little bacteria that lives inside of him. The termite eats the wood, but he cannot digest the wood. The little enzyme inside of him actually digests the wood for him. Which one evolved first? You got a serious chicken and egg problem when evolution comes true. If creation is true, then I would make some predictions. If God really made the world, I would predict that there would be lots of symbiotic relationships. If there really was a worldwide flood, I predict that we would see evidence of that flood all over the globe. That's exactly what we see. I would predict that we would find thousands of things buried in rock layers all over the surface of the earth from a worldwide flood. That's exactly what we see. They say all those layers are different ages. No, they're not. They got trees standing up, running through different layers of strata in a geologic column. How do you get that to happen if those layers were laid down over millions of years? You ever seen a tree stand there for millions of years and never fall over or rot or die? It doesn't happen. Some people say, well, the tree grew through a couple hundred feet of rock looking for sunlight. Okay, come on, seriously. Sometimes the trees are buried upside down in the layers. Roots are up. You ever seen one of those trees growing? You got to dig for your apples? Real pain in the butt, by the way. We don't see that. Come on now, guys. The evidence clearly shows us evolution is not true. What's the evidence? What's the proof of evolution? I want to hear it. I want to see it. What's the evidence for macroevolution, changing from one kind of animal into a different kind of animal? Don't give me this, well, wolves and dogs. That's the same kind. Okay? Let's go with real evolution here. Is there any evidence? The answer we have to come down to is no.
This is our last question in the rounds here. Thank you to both speakers for coming out. To Frank, could you please explain the transition from non-living to living in the evolutionary process?
Yes. And if I could, I'd be standing there in Sweden getting my Nobel Prize.
Exactly.
With a bunch of chumps.
Good luck.
Well, first of all, I think we have to understand what life is. What life is basically a chemical process. We tend to think of the smallest organisms in terms of bacteria or the protist world. But what about viruses? What are viruses? Are viruses living organisms? No, I'm afraid they're not. Why? Because they lack a discrete DNA structure. Okay. Now what about viruses? What about prions? What about those rogue proteins that basically have something to do with things like diseases like scarpies, mad cow disease, spongiform? What about those? Those are just proteins. But those are proteins that are self-replicating. Those are proteins that basically have all of the properties of life except what? Except, again, a discrete DNA structure. How did that DNA structure come about? That's basically the question we're asking. How far are we away from synthesizing life as we know it? Very close.
All right, everyone, we've come to a close here. I hope you enjoyed everything. I'd like to thank American River College, the churches, everything that has come out here and helped set this up. And thank you for being a good audience. They may stick around. You may come up and ask some questions later. Once again, let's give them one big round of applause.
Yeah, I have to teach her.